What's up, everyone? Welcome to Level 7. It is time for another episode of the Agents of Fandom podcast. I'm your host, TJ Zwarich, ready to talk about some Ironheart, which has now come to its conclusion on Disney+, which also means we are only 2 weeks away from Fantastic Four First Steps hitting theaters, the next big MCU movie. 3 weeks, 2 weeks, same diff. I'm getting excited. It's 3 weeks, but I wanted it to be 2. But helping me talk about Ironheart today, my trusty co-host, reminding me that it's 3 weeks, not 2. We got Damon Gray. How you doing, Damon?
Oh, because we're only 1 week away from Superman, TJ. Don't you dare disrespect.
In my brain,
Big
it was
Blue?
Superman, because next week was Superman week and it's 2 weeks away. That was 2 weeks. I was already kind of thinking we're in Superman week, but I got a little too ahead of myself.
A little bit. Don't get too far ahead. We still have this to recap, even though it came and went just like that. That's what happens when you drop 6 episodes in 2 days, technically, in 2 weeks.
Yeah, it went by really, really quick. I do feel like this is a show that really could have handled the week to week. I think it could have been a show that was, if not week to week, 2 episodes a week instead of 3. I think could have been a really beneficial release model for this one. But we are, of course, talking Ironheart right now. We will be dropping our Ironheart interview with a couple executive producers tomorrow on Saturday. If you're joining us live, it's tomorrow. And if you are joining us live or even after the fact, hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our upcoming shows, because we will have one more breakdown of the second half of season 4 of The Bear next week. And then we will be talking Superman as well, because it is Superman week. We'll have our preview, we'll have our review. And then in a couple of weeks, we got Fantastic Four as well. We got the Comic Corner every Thursday. We have our Love Island podcast every Wednesday. We got things popping, so make sure you stay tuned, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and most of all, hit the like button on this video so that we can battle those YouTube algorithm overlords. Joining us today is a friend of the show. He's been here lots, but never that often recently. I feel like we had MTF on a lot more in the past than we do now, and we got to change that.
Yes, we do. Yes,
Michael
we do.
Trelford, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm all right. Speaking of battling the algorithm, many of us have friends in the AI and or friends that we might want to put in the AI, but I am flesh and blood. No truth to the rumor that you might have had to sell your soul to get me here. But I'm rested and refreshed. It's my nation's birthday today, and some birthdays are more bittersweet than others. But this might be, the last one we have for a while under the current administration. So I did my best to celebrate freedom's last days.
Freedom's last days is a good way of putting it. Not feeling like a whole lot to celebrate in the United States this year, but thankfully what we can celebrate is a lot of good television that has come across our screens in 2025. And at least personally for me, one of those things is Ironheart. But before we dive into it, I do want to know what you're watching, because I got to see a new movie last night that I'm looking forward to talking about. But Damon, I'll throw it to you first. What you've been watching, or if you haven't been watching, what you've been reading.
Well, I haven't been watching much of anything in the comic book movie, TV show landscape other than this show, and more or less just getting ready for Superman next week. So I've been reading some of my old Superman comics that I have way down yonder, some Golden Age, some OG Superman stuff back when he was a good old menace. Love him back then. Hilarious. Go on, take down a government by just destroying a town and be like, oh yeah, this area's, underfunded, needs new buildings. I'm just going to become a human cyclone and tear it all down. Government, go rebuild it. That's OG Superman right there. That's what we love about him. Newer stuff. Ultimate Wolverine came out this week. And we have an evil magic on the cover, and you get a little bit of evil magic in the book, and that's always fun. But Ultimate Wolverine is one of my favorite Ultimate books on the shelf right now, so you go check it out. You can hear myself, TJ, aka Fat Thor, and AS full thoughts on all these books that come out this week on the Comic Corner podcast, which is out now. So go watch it, or listen, or both.
Other than The Bear, which I binged, and Love Island, which we talk about on different shows here on the Agents of Fandom podcast, so I'm not going to dive deeply into them. The only other thing I've watched recently was Heads of State, the new John Cena and Idris Elba movie, and it is, for those who don't know, it's John Cena is the president of the United States, Idris Elba is the prime minister of UK. And they go on a little buddy cop type extravaganza with each other to try and stop world war from happening. And it's silly, absolutely. But
have you guys done a cinema president's draft? I really think that needs to happen because we have had some unlikely presidents in these streaming movies. I mean, I recently saw the one with Viola Davis as the president, and it seems like it's the concept of a badass action president. It hasn't aged very well since the old Air Force One days, and we need to again, back to the last days of democracy. We really need to rediscover what it means to have our action president.
I would pick the actual John Cena as president over what you guys got right now.
Well, again, when the bar is on the floor, you don't need to go very high. But it took me a second to realize, because I knew what the premise of the movie was, but then when I saw the clip, I was like, wait a second, John Cena is playing the president. That means people voted for John Cena.
And he's pretty, and like John Cena is essentially just like John Cena in the movie. Like he's playing an actor who's an action star.
Playing a character. He was playing John Cena if he were the president of the United States.
Yeah, and it's like he's like, I'm all about hope and justice, and it's like, oh, this is literally just like WWE John Cena talking right now.
Loyalty and respect, because it felt very too authentic for me.
It was not like a fantastic movie by any means, but it was a fun popcorn movie. Definitely enjoyable if you got nothing to do on an evening and you just want to have some fun, throw something on. MTF, how about you? What you been watching?
I went the other way, in keeping with the ongoing theme of dystopia. I went and binged the final season, which was really a half season, of Squid Game. Everyone's favorite people competing in a capitalist dystopia show. And they really plumbed the depths of human depravity just in the right time. And although it was definitely my least favorite season of the three, I think I would have enjoyed it more if they, instead of breaking up season 2 and season 3, if it was just one long season, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. I mean, I think that it lost a lot of steam and a lot of momentum from where it was at in season 2, but I still recommend it, especially if you were a fan of the first season.
Netflix is hilarious. I had no idea season 3 dropped until you just told me about it.
Oh.
Good old Netflix. What is marketing?
They don't care about that. They just assume people are going to be logging in every day, and so that's all that matters to them. And they're not worried about word of mouth because it's a binge series, anyways. They don't care if we watch it today, tomorrow, 2 months from now, as long as we watch it. So,
that ties into the Ironheart of it all. It's almost like Marvel and Disney tried to pull a Netflix with respect to Ironheart.
Honestly, it kind of seemed like, from the Disney standpoint, it seemed like everything under their umbrella that's not Fantastic Four, they were just like, hey, we need to save our money, and we're putting all of those marketing dollars towards Fantastic Four, because The Bear is FX, which is owned by Disney. Elio is Pixar, which is owned by Disney, and Ironheart, which is Marvel, owned by Disney. All of them were just like, thrown out there for people to find. Elio has great word of mouth, but no one knows that it's in theaters. And then you have Ironheart, which was, I think, to most a pleasant surprise because people went into it with very low expectations due to the lack of marketing and the release strategy. And then The Bear as well. Like, this is a incredibly critically acclaimed, award-winning show that they didn't send out almost any press screenings for. They just slid it right onto Hulu and Disney Plus internationally, and we're like, people will find it when they find it.
Well, they dropped the entire season?
Yeah.
Wow.
Which they always do for The Bear, actually.
Okay. Yeah, I've never seen it. I'm waiting to binge all of The Bear at some point. But that's also basic Chernobyl, right? So there's our segue. You know, which of the characters in Ironheart would most feel at home on The Bear?
Big Chicago week for us. 2 weeks for us here on the podcast. We're covering Ironheart and The Bear at the same time, but I would say probably Natalie. I feel like Natalie would be able to handle that front of house, you know, give her Richie's job and she'd be able to do a good job. But let's start talking about Ironheart. That's what the main event is. That's what the people are here for. And so before we dive into the breakdown of it all, I feel like there's less to break down specifically than there was last week. Last week, there was more small events that I wanted to cover. This week, there was like a few really big ones, and that's kind of about it. But before we start talking about it, I want to spoiler-free reactions. Damon, what did you think about this series?
Ironheart for me is a lot of high highs and a lot of low lows. There's some characters that I really enjoy. I get really excited when certain people come up, when certain themes come up. And I'm like, yeah, this is what I'm here for. And then there's another half of it, which if you're here last week, you know which half of it just didn't click with me. That whenever they're on screen, I'm like, all right, we'll get through this. We'll move. We'll get to the good stuff. We just gotta kind of push through this area. So for me, it's like some things I really enjoy. Some things are not for me. I know some other people really enjoy. Specifically, I'm talking about like the heist group. Like for me, a little too goofy, a little too cheesy, especially with kind of like the tone of the show being like really heartfelt, really serious. And then you go back to the heist group and it's like, I have one personality and that's about it. I like to blow things up and it's like, cool. So that aspect is unfortunate. I think in the end, where the show left off is in a much more interesting place than at any point in the show was. And that's frustrating because there isn't a season 2. We've been talking about this all week. There probably won't be a season 2, and who the hell knows if / when / where they will continue this story, and that annoys the crap out of me for where this left off.
Yeah, I'd love to piggyback on that point. If we knew for a fact that there was going to be an Ironheart season 2, I would be elated at this season because it really set up. It raised the stakes. I mean, it in a lot of ways, you know how at the end of Loki, how we felt, you know, there wasn't a lot of resolution, but we knew that we were getting another season and the stakes had been raised and the game had been changed and, you know, we were in it for what was coming next. I thought that Ironheart as a first season of an ongoing television show was a home run. But as a single season miniseries was we'll call it a double. You know, there were a lot of good things. It puts you in position to score, but you know, we still don't know who's up to bat next. We don't know, you know, we're not really sure whether ultimately the story is going to be brought home, and that's that's where the frustration sets in. You know, we did a lot of table setting, a lot of chess pieces being moved around, and ultimately we got to a really good place, but we don't know whether it's going to go anywhere.
I talk about it a lot with how most of these Disney Plus series have been almost like a, Ms. Marvel. When you meet her, she's Kamala Khan, but at the end of that series, she is Ms. Marvel, and wherever you see her next, that's who she's going to be. Wanda at the beginning of WandaVision was Wanda Maximoff, and at the end, she is the Scarlet Witch, et cetera, et cetera. With at the beginning of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, he is the Falcon. At the end, he is Captain America. And they just kind of have that like this character self-actualized, and now the next time you see them, they're their best self, ready to rock. Whereas, or I guess with Wanda's her worst self. And this one is more of just like, we are setting you up for her epic story. And it feels like and you will see her next in her movie. But that is not anything that's on the table right now. And so for me, I agree with you guys 100%. I said this to Damon, and we'll dive in more to what the ending specifically is. But I said this to Damon throughout the week that like I really, really enjoyed this series. I enjoyed how the finale went, but I think it's genuinely an audacious finale if they don't plan on picking up this story whatsoever, because we're all, I think, a little bit have, comic book PTSD from the way Marvel has done post-credit scenes lately, where no matter how cool some of them are, there's just no endings, like there's no pickup point for any of these. When are we going to see Hercules again? When are we going to see Eros again? When are we going to see Clea again? Clea we probably will at some point, but what, etc. And so with that being the case, it does give worry that, especially with how the Disney execs have talked about, well, maybe we're going to be focusing a little less on television, a little more on the movies. If Ironheart is going to be getting another series, whether it's a solo, whether it's a group series at all going forward, whether this story will pick up in a movie, but we will get to that more later on. I want to start talking about the individual episode, not the individual episode breakdowns, but we can kind of look at this as a block and start diving into it, because I had hope, and actually, spoiler warning, but my hope was somewhat a little bit fulfilled, that my guy, Zeke Stane, wasn't going to go full baddie.
I was a little, again, this is the example of the 3-episode binge versus week to week. If we had been watching this, each week, I would, the odds would have been very much at the end of episode, I suppose, 4, thinking, oh no, he's going full heel. He's going to basically be her nemesis. And I wasn't looking forward to it because I thought they actually had pretty good chemistry when they shared screen time together. And I didn't want to see them as full-on antagonists. I mean, where they left it, I suppose, is more like frenemies, and that's a little bit more of an intriguing dynamic than full-on, hatred.
Yeah, 100%. And I felt like that Heart of Gold was deep in there somewhere. Flashes it on occasion, but this is still a pretty damaged man here. And Zeke Stane, like MTF said, Damon, he goes heel, but not before. He is locked up. It's all Riri's fault. He gets locked up. She tries to go see him. He wants absolutely none of it. But he's a little more receptive, Damon, when Parker comes rolling in.
I'm going to be honest. I really didn't like what they did with Zeke as the last 3 episodes kind of went on. I mentioned the goofiness of the heist group. They went full goof with Zeke Stane, like full off the rails.
The puppet man thing was very goofy.
Yes.
They made him static. They literally made him static.
Oh, well, so he has electric powers. It's more of a suit. Like that's kind of like visually, like I was like, oh, okay, I see what they did there. They just they gave him the powers, but without the suit. And I'm like, that's a cheap way to do it. Fine. But as MTF said, the puppet kind of thing that they end up going on with, where it's like, oh yeah, this guy over here just has full admin rights to your entire body, bro. And I'm like, okay. Weird.
Yeah. I mean,
all right.
I feel like there was a better way. There was a better way to take away his agency and, force him to work for Parker than to just give him, voice commands.
Literally, if we kind of kept along the lines where I wouldn't even say if he went full tech, because they bring up something in this show that we'll get into a bit with Zelma that I kind of wish they went with him more of a magical route. Because in the end, the theme of it is everything has a price. So if his price for going more of a magical route is he no longer has control over his own body, that makes more sense with kind of like the themes of the show that they were going with, rather than we hacked into his own system by doing a simple override right when he was about to go under. Easy peasy. I'm like, all right, whatever.
Or I would have been okay if it was on the tech side, even if there was more to it and he had like zero autonomy whatsoever. Like that personality was gone and he was just an android, because I feel like that would have added an additional thing to Riri's plate of like she feels the guilt that this happened to him and now she's got to save him. She's got to turn him back. She's got to bring she's got to turn this Zeke android back into the Joe McGillicuddy that she knows.
It was also
but
very cliche.
I did kind of like his dynamic with Parker, when Parker was not mind controlling him. I like Alden Ehrenreich's like snark, his ability to snark in
It's Han
a
Solo.
situation. Well, not quite, but there was make Solo 2 happen. But beyond that, I thought that they had pretty good chemistry as well, but it was always undercut by the fact that Parker had the admin privileges and could just puppet him around. So I wouldn't have wanted him to lose his personality completely. I just thought that there was just a more elegant way that he could have been in his thrall without, just it was very stiff. I don't think he played it like an override. I mean, we've seen this dynamic, this plot device used in
It's
other
very much
contexts.
trope now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Westworld, right? I mean, I don't know if you guys all watch Westworld. Like Westworld, when they do that, like it works. It didn't work as well in this version of the story.
Especially when you play it off as like a joke and he's going around being like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
It kind of, I thought it kind of wore thin on me pretty quick too. The amount of times they did I'm never going to do that for you. Yes, you are. And then he starts doing it. Like, you don't have to do, he's a smart man. He's going to clue in at some point. He's not going to just keep saying no and have it turned on him. Like, that part didn't really work for me all that well either, but it worked as a plot device to have Parker turn against Riri. He needs somebody to take over her job. So he finds somebody who in his mind she is also wronged, because in his mind she's the villain here, not him. And so he breaks Zeke out of prison with the crew's help. And so Riri needs to go and get a new crew herself. She needs help with the hood. She's lasered off this little piece. That's what got Zeke in jail in the first place. She needs help with it. She has tested it out. No science will suffice. She's got to find some magic. And so she goes over to talk to Miss Stanton, who she met in the first episode.
Enter Zelma Stanton. Definitely an infusion of the show needed Zelma from the beginning, I think.
I agree. Zelma, it became immediately one of my favorite parts of this show. And we get like a really fun twist on it for if you didn't know that this character was going to be in the show. She was reported to be part of the cast in advance, as was the big reveal at the end of the season. But if you didn't see this stuff, this was a really, really cool reveal. And Damon, this is a character that I know you've read a little bit about comics, and not only
all about. Not
a whole lot. I was underselling it. But not only do we get Zelma and a magical character doing magic, teasing Doctor Strange, but we kind of get a full-on Strange Academy tease here. It's happening behind the scenes.
Am I the only person that wants them to slow play Strange Academy? Like I would rather see her just straight up apprentice for Doctor Strange like in
Which
Aaron
apparently
run.
she said in an interview, like all the stuff that happened in Jason Aaron's run, which is where she makes her appearance, where she essentially has like these magical maggots in her brain and in her head, and he has to go in and remove them. Like she said, apparently all that's already happened, and I'm like, oh, why do all the cool Doctor Strange moments happen off camera?
Oh wow!
All of
So
them.
that means Bats is countdown to Bats.
I get that's what I'm saying. Like, there's so many like cool Doctor Strange things going on off camera. Where are my duo snakes too? I'll agree with you on that MTF. I said this years ago that if Marvel Studios does Strange Academy, I need it to be two things. One, I need it to be about destiny and what you are supposed to be, quote unquote, supposed to be, and what you actually choose to be, because that's what the whole series is about. It's the Doyle Dormammu thing. He is destined to become his father, but he chooses not to be. Instead, his best friend, Emily Bright, who is destined to be the next bright thing, goes the dark route, right? That is the point of Strange Academy. And my second point on that whole thing is I need that show to be animated, because there's no way in hell you're making a live action show with a boy who's the son of Dormammu with a flaming head, with an ice giant outside a window, with a weird world ice person, with a limbo demon, and a fairy, and so many other different types of characters that make that like group as unique and as fun as it is, and a zombie girl to throw on top of all that.
No, I think
So
you're right. I think
Strange,
I 100% am on board with that more as an animated series than a live action series. And then you can
yeah,
still have all the voices. It could still
yeah,
be it's set in the MCU, but
absolutely,
you just have you have it be animated so that you can really bring everything to light.
Which is
absolutely.
exactly what you can do with more She-Hulk too. Something that would need to be a big
Yeah, well,
budget to work.
I mean that's my
Give us the
that is
animated show because so that we can still get more of this cool character without having to break the budget all the time, and then just have her show up in movies.
yeah. And everyone can guest star in She-Hulk
Yes,
because it'd be case of the week with
Mhm.
all the cast of characters from the MCU having legal issues.
that
Yes,
is
What?
what
we've already greenlit two. The next time you talk to Brad Winterbaum, let him know that we've got two animated series that we need.
And number 3, not as an animated series, should be Young Avengers, and that's when we should be seeing Riri again next. That should be at bare minimum 13 episode season that keeps dropping new seasons. Like that should be not should
So
be that should have been 5 years
okay,
ago.
so we
Priority
have to
one.
we have to table that. We have to table that because I go back and forth about whether if I could sell my soul to a certain cosmic hell entity for what I want, would I rather have a Riri story continue in Ironheart season 2 or in Young Avengers? We can table that for later, so when we get to where the season ends up, because I mean I really do think that Ironheart season 2 can work, you know, especially if it's going to be another 6 episodes. I think there's enough there, to pick up the story and continue it, and maybe introduce another character or two. But anyway, like I said, I know I too have been waiting for Young Avengers, but I just don't know that she would get enough um, of a focal point to continue to tell her story within the Young Avengers story.
Things like Young Avengers / Champions, Strange Academy, these are things, Damon, that you and I have been hoping for and preaching about for literally 3+ years now. And it is tough that we're getting to a point that I don't know if they can happen anymore. I feel like Young Avengers would have to be a movie if it's going to happen. And I just don't know where these are going to get slotted in with the big Doomsday, Secret Wars, then X-Men plans that they have going forward. I kind of feel like these cool ideas may just fall by the wayside, which is sad because they are some of the coolest stuff that we could have gotten, I think, in this phase. But we get the introduction to magic, we get the cool Zelma stuff, and she seems very clearly worried that this could potentially be coming from Dormammu. And I had talked to a lot of the people who had not heard the Sascha Baron Cohen news long before from the trades, long before the series came out, And so because of that, they were fully expecting this to be Dormammu related, and it was a really cool reveal for them. So I thought that was pretty
that was
fun
nice.
to get there for
It
those
was
who
well.
had,
It was well executed. It was
yeah.
well executed for sure.
Yeah. If you hadn't seen it in the news in advance, I think that was pretty well executed. But Natalie has had enough with everything that's going on. She wants some space. She goes and brings the body. When after a disagreement with Riri, she brings the suit and goes and picks up Xavier in it and brings Xavier to Riri because she feels like that is the only person who can calm her down because she's overwhelmed. She's dealing with she doesn't know it yet, but she's dealing with the devil and she's freaking out. She's dealing with magic. She can't figure it out. And so Natalie goes and gets Xavier because she thinks that's the only person who can calm down Riri. But that means Natalie and Xavier meet, and Xavier is pissed, Damon.
Yeah. To be expected, as we thought he would be.
Yeah, for sure.
And I thought, like, I get it because she was not in a good space, but I feel like Riri could have done a much better job of explaining that. Like, I did not intend for this to happen. Let me tell you exactly what happened. I fell asleep and it created itself from my brain waves. I was trying to recreate the AI from Wakanda, and this is what happened. I feel like that's a lot more understandable than like it was my subconscious, as opposed to I didn't, as opposed to just like it just happened.
Yeah, sure. But when you come off an anxiety attack like that, like
yeah, I mean the other piece of it is that like this is one of those situations where both people were right, in my opinion. From Xavier's standpoint, that's his sister. He's not. He sees the quote unquote abomination, the disrespect to his sister's memory of the AI. He sees it from that perspective. But Riri, as a person that was not dealing with her grief, that was completely compartmentalized, and was in denial about what she was dealing with. For her, having the AI of Natalie to interact with and remind her of the role that Natalie played in her life was important to her process and to her grieving. The problem was that she didn't recognize that that wouldn't be the same for Xavier. That just because Natalie was valuable and important, the Natalie AI was valuable and important to her. It wasn't the relationship, especially because she came out of Riri's subconscious. She's Natalie filtered through their relationship. She's not Natalie who she is in 3 dimensions, and especially not Natalie in relationship to Xavier. So, her mistake was thinking that well, in a way, that was her reluctance, right? In the first 3 episodes of introducing Xavier to Natalie was knowing that on a certain level that he wasn't going to respond positively to it. And then of course it happened, even kind of worse than she had feared.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's like such a great point, is that this is, no matter how well Riri knew Natalie, her own brain can't reconstruct a full-on Natalie. The Natalie Xavier knows is a totally different person than the Natalie that Riri knows, because they have different experiences. And they, for one, even then, it's still not the whole picture because you would need Natalie herself to construct it, but they would have different experiences with these people. And so they'd have different biases, different perspectives on who they are and how they would act in different situations. If I'm just thinking, like, if it's me in that situation, I'm just trying to convey to Xavier that, like, Riri reacted the exact same way as Xavier did when she met Natalie. Natalie, this was an Ultron situation where they did not mean to make what happened. It was a higher power creating an accident. And I would try and just convey that, like, hey, I was all fucked up too when I first saw this. So, like, I get that you need a minute. I didn't do it on purpose. Just so you know, I didn't do it on purpose. Not that that makes it okay, but I feel like it impacts it a little bit. And we kind of already touched on Zeke's new powers, but that's what's going on at the same time. He officially gets them. It gets tested here. and we get at the beginning of episode 5 the Zeke and Riri fight, and it kind of is Riri's holding her own until the rest of the crew step in, help out, and she eventually gets got, and crew steals her suit. Suit's gone.
I kind of feel the opposite. I feel like she was holding her own against the crew until Zeke showed up. I think that
Zeke comes in and gives her the 1-2, and then she kind of like gets back, and we're like, okay, is she going to win this one? And then it ends once the two sides come together.
I mean, I feel kind of how Damon feels about the crew. Like, I think that the actors, had a little spark of something, but they just didn't get good material. And I was kind of happy. The closer that they got to being off the board, I was happy that that Riri got to fight them. She got to beat them, and then sort of send them off on their merry way. Because they were the heist crew just didn't work for me.
I don't
And
think they were bad, but it's like you said, Damon, they were so one-dimensional. Each had one personality trait, and that was all that either of them had. And so when you have these moments of like Zeke is angrily ripping the Ironheart suit off of her body and taking it apart piece by piece, and we're counteracting it with these kind of goofballs, it is a complete change in tone. But what did you think of the Zeke versus Ironheart fight, Damon?
That was pretty quick. Thought it showed that Zeke came in with the anger, but in the end, he still had a little bit of remorse, a little bit of a heart left to let her go, lie and say that he killed her. Even though it seemed like the crew didn't really believe him either, but they were starting to get skeptical over the hood as well. So it got the job done.
yeah.
And
I mean, thought that the relationship, the foundation that was set in the first 3 episodes with the relationship between Joe, later Zeke, and Riri, of course he felt betrayed, but not so betrayed and not so angry that he would go full on homicide, and, I bought it.
yeah, absolutely. 100%. And then we get Clown. She sees it all happen. She sees that Riri gets away, but she decides to not let that information give that information to Parker, because she's not trusting him at this point either, because Riri revealed to her that Parker killed Rampage, which she hasn't been able to confirm yet. She asks him about it, but he doesn't deny it or admit it. He just kind of brushes by it and is like, why are you asking me things like this? We're a family, and just kind of starts deflecting to that. But eventually, as their squad is falling apart, Riri's squad is getting stronger. We got our little man Landon back. We have her mom fully on the same
Landon
page.
in his wagon.
Yeah, he's got his wagon. He's bringing it in. Riri owes him money, but he's going to help anyways because he's a good guy. We got Xavier back, not accepting of what Natalie is, but wanting to support Riri through this tough time. And of course, Zelma with the team as well, working her magic. Damon, I think episode 4 was my favorite episode of the series. And this part where we're getting the Zelma and Riri together, whenever we get that, I think that was my favorite part of this episode for sure.
Well, look, it was the one thing that I wanted out of the show. It's the one thing that I kept talking about this show, and why I was excited about it more than any other Iron project ever is because every other Iron project prior to this is, what if Tony Stark's armor fell into the wrong hands? That's Iron Man 1, that's Iron Man 2, that's Iron Man 3. And this is, what if we did technology versus magic? And it took a while to get there, but when we got there, it was cool. I wish we had more of it. So moments like this, seeing like how the tech and the magic go well with each other, don't go well with each other, that's what I was here for. So those little moments that we got, I dug it.
Couldn't agree more. I felt like they maybe left too much to the imagination in terms of how this magic and how this technology are combining together to create this new suit. I would have liked if they dove into the magic side of things a little bit more, instead of just like, here's Zelma doing stuff in the background and she's dropping goop on the suit. But still, I thought it was a lot of fun whenever they combined it. What did you think, NTF?
Well, there's the thing. Not to go back to dumping on the heist crew, but like Zelma showed up and immediately won us over.
As did
You know what I
Natalie
mean?
earlier in the series.
Yeah. You know, so it could have been done with the the dynamic between Riri and Zelma worked right off the bat in a way that her dynamic with none of the people except maybe John. I think John was his name, right? The cousin.
Yeah.
I think he was the only one of the heist crew that felt multidimensional and felt like someone that that demanded and commanded their screen time, you know, in the way that Zelma did. So yeah, more of the fact that she was introduced as a character, the fact that she had an agenda and had a personality and had things that she was aspiring towards, and her story intersected with Riri's story in a believable way. You know, that's what propelled the back half of the season. You know, it was believable that she would be a part of Riri's crew. Um, and not just, you know, for plot reasons.
What do we think of the new suit?
I
The
mean,
new Ironheart suit. Visually.
um, obviously the
Better
car,
than the
obviously,
Wakanda Forever one.
yeah,
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
agree.
Yeah, it looks less like a Gundam suit for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, she built it, you know, not in a cave with some scraps, but you know, she's
In a
been
garage
turned.
with a box of scraps and some magic. Some magic goop.
And a very nice CUDA, RIP. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness. Car lovers everywhere. Like, they must hate the MCU. They must hate the MCU. The amount of times that they just destroy gorgeous cars in this universe. In
yeah, for
Hawkeye,
sure.
they killed the Challenger. Uh, countless times that I'm just can't think of other cases. But this is another one. RIP.
But yeah, I definitely dug the 2.0 suit more than the MIT suit, which just goes to show, you know, what are they doing over at MIT? Um, how could they be outshined by just Riri and her friends? But you know, the power of friendship. That's what I'm seeing. And Bulls
Unfortunately,
colors. I have to mention. Need to mention Chicago Bulls colors.
unfortunately, as Zelma told us earlier, magic has a cost. And so as this suit gets added to the Ironheart's mainframe, the magic also removes Natalie, the AI, from the suit, and she almost Thanos snap disappears like an AI, you know? She's just kind of like evaporating
Yeah.
until all of a sudden she is gone. And the episode ends on a negative point for Riri. It also does for Parker's team as he tries to deflect and to gaslight, but they all say, screw you, you killed the Rampage. We are getting the hell out of here. And he is left all alone with none other than his android puppet Zeke. And we transition to episode 6, where right immediately at the beginning of episode 6, we get a demonic flashback featuring Parker, and we are introduced to none other than Mephisto. He's finally here. The devil of the Marvel Universe has finally entered the Marvel Cinematic Universe after years of speculation dating back to the beginning of WandaVision. Mephisto is here, Damon. How did the reveal work for you?
That was pretty good. I wish I didn't know about it. That'd have been really cool. But you know, when this was reported by the trades years ago, you can't get around that. And it wasn't just like internet rumors; it was straight up like by the trades. So when like a THR, for example, comes walking on in, you take it for what it is, and you're like, all right, cool. I really wish I didn't know that because that reveal would have been really cool. I was starting to. The more Zelma kept saying Dormammu, and the more she was like, look at the marks on them. They're very similar. And I'm like, oh, yeah, she's kind of got a
Yeah, the
point.
Facilius name drop.
Yeah, I was like, oh, she's kind of got a
That was a
point.
pretty
Like,
good
maybe,
misdirect.
I was like, maybe we were misdirected. No. Okay. So I was like, all right. I've seen some folks get upset. They're like, why did Mephisto make his debut not in a magic thing, but in Ironheart, right? And let's all remind people that Mephisto shows up everywhere. It doesn't matter
Yeah,
whether
he's
you're
Mephisto.
Spider-Man. It doesn't matter whether you're Howard Stark, who has made deals with Mephisto in the past. Mephisto will show up anywhere to get his grimy little hands wherever he wants them. And whenever he sees promise, whenever he sees a way to get into control, to get into power, he will be there because he can see a little bit into the future. So he must know that the Hood was going to maybe cross paths with Riri. And then Riri may be crossing paths with some very powerful individuals down the line. So who knows? And I think we'll chat more about that in a bit. But the reveal was very cool. It goes to show also never make a deal in a Chicago pizza joint where it's cut in squares, folks. Square
I'm
pizza,
not gonna lie, that pizza
bad
did look good,
things are
though.
gonna happen.
That pizza looked good.
It was cut in squares. It's terrible. F
It's
minus.
thin pizza in Chicago. I'm gonna take it.
F minus. Never trust
I
a
had the
square
square
pizza, folks. The
slices when I
devil
was in
will always be
Chicago a
there.
couple weeks. I should have taken your advice. But I mean, if it was a deep dish, it would have been even more devilish, if we're being honest.
Well, then it's not pizza.
MTF, what did you think of the reveal? I thought, like, even though I knew it was coming,
Mhm.
moving that aside, I thought it was written really well.
I actually liked everything with Mephisto, even before he revealed himself to be Mephisto. I liked his dynamic with Parker. I liked the performance. I mean, Sascha Baron Cohen was just chewing scenery the whole time. And it was giving He Who Remains a little bit, like, I'm here. A lot of people thought I wouldn't be here, and I'm gonna explain how important I am to the story. But unfortunately, he could only do but so much with Parker. But when he, gets that scene with Riri, that's when the stakes are at their highest because on one hand, by the story mechanics of the classic MCU show, where hero should have learned a lesson and turned Mephisto down. But going back to what I was saying about if this were season one of a multiple season television show, you see the parallels between what Parker was doing and what was motivating Parker and what in fact was motivating Riri. They're not that different. It's a cliche when the villain says that, but this is a situation where they really aren't that different. It's just one pursued it with technology and another one pursued it with magic. It's still two suits, though.
I want to bounce off of what MTF said. I know I'm skipping ahead about this point. I just need to bounce off of it because I think my takeaway with this show to make me kind of like enjoy it more and to think about it a little deeper is that every other MCU show is almost, when it comes to these characters, almost like an origin story, right? Moon Knight was essentially an origin story. Hawkeye was more or less an origin story for our introduction to Kate Bishop. Ms. Marvel is an origin story for Ms. Marvel. WandaVision, more or less an origin story for Wanda becoming properly the Scarlet Witch. In this case, we already knew Riri from Wakanda Forever. We didn't need an origin story for her. This is a tragedy. This is Marvel Studios taking on a tragedy where by the end, she is broken. She is completely a different individual in all the wrong ways. She made a deal with the devil. And it's the tragedy of Riri Williams, a young, bright young woman who had everything in front of her, but in the end made a deal with the devil because of her grief. She grieved so long for her friend.
Not just her grief.
Not just her grief. That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. It is definitely a part of it. Obviously, it is definitely a part of it. But it was because when you have Mephisto there, the second Mephisto showed up, and I'm actually kind of upset at myself, TJ, because I had this finale in my head for a while where I was like, I wonder if she's going to end up making a deal with Mephisto to bring back
Natalie.
And Natalie, thank you, to bring back Natalie. And I was like, no, we've heard that the finale is crazy. I'm like, that's like almost too small. And you think bigger than that. So in the end, I was like, oh wow, they actually did go that route. And it's fascinating because some people are like, Riri would never make that decision. So and so would never make that decision. Everyone always makes that decision because Mephisto always gets his way. He always knows the right thing to say. The second you see him show up, you're kind of screwed at that point.
Very good point. Very, very good point. And I honestly think we can kind of skip by some of the other stuff and just stay with the Mephisto and the reveal of it all. The only other thing really to talk about is like you get Ironheart fighting the Hood. It was kind of cool. It was fine. She eventually wins. It was a cool little fight. You get the reveal that Parker is doing all this to get back at his dad and to get power because he was born with
Parker was rich. Parker was, he's got disinherited and he just wanted the money. Who knew?
He was born with privilege and it was taken away from him and it was gone and he had to live with nothing. And he wanted revenge on his dad and he wanted power. I thought that was a pretty cool reveal, but something
I wish we got way earlier in the series, honestly.
Yes.
Like that specific aspect, I wish we got like way earlier. That would have made me feel a little something.
With the amount of reveals that we got in the end, I don't think that needed to be one. I think that could have been something that wasn't a surprise and was alluded to as we go on throughout the series. But in order for that to be done well, it comes back to my complaint every episode about the Disney Plus model. 6 episodes, television shows don't work, especially when you don't format them with a limited series with that has a closed chapter at the end of it and you leave it open-ended. Like you need more time to explore these characters. It always kind of comes back to that for me. Every Disney Plus series, every complaint that I have is like, it should have been longer. And that's kind of what it comes down to for all of it for me. But Damon, I really like how you laid out the Mephisto deal with the devil aspect of it. It can't just be something that Riri would never do, because that is Mephisto's power. That is what he does. And we essentially get Riri Ironheart one more day, because just like Spidey, she made her deal with the devil to bring back a loved one who had died. And Natalie is...
Now there's a cost.
Natalie is back, not as her AI, because Riri didn't specify she wanted her AI back. She said she wanted Natalie back. Probably subconsciously.
I thought that was intentional. I actually thought that she intentionally brought back living Natalie. I think that her,
well, my thought process is subconsciously it was intentional.
Can I talk about something real quick about this?
Yeah. Hold on just a second. She could justify it to herself because of that and go like, oh, I wanted my AI back. Oh, whoops. But inside that is what she really wanted. What were you going to say, Damon?
There was a moment when they're going back. First of all, I have to say, Sascha Baron Cohen as Mephisto is inspired casting. It's perfect casting.
Yeah.
Like the way he smiled, the way his like accents literally just kept changing every other sentence was kind of funny. And I thought it was perfect for Mephisto. Obviously the reveal when you see the reflection of the red-faced devil, like the real Mephisto very quickly in the spoon and the get out spoon to be like, it was like very, I was like, this is so good. Like little moments like that I thought were great. I was convinced at one point when they're going back and forth that we were witnessing 2 different branches of reality, because this is the multiverse saga that we haven't been dealing with, and I thought we were about to see one version of Riri that made the deal and one version of Riri that didn't. That would have like kind of tied in somewhere, hopefully soon, in the multiverse saga. But why would we do that?
No, but I really want to drill down, because when I was working out in my head as the scene was playing out, and I was trying to say, okay, is she going to somehow outsmart Mephisto, in this situation? One difference between the choice that the deal that Parker made and the deal that Riri made is that Parker did something that was fully selfish, fully self-aggrandizing. I'm doing this for power, for myself. Riri did what a lot of people would see as a selfless thing, bringing a person back from the dead, a person that died under tragic circumstances. And maybe in her mind, you know, even knowing what Parker did, even knowing how it blew back on him, that doing it for your own ego, doing it for your own, you know, desire to be successful, you know, and if still did offer something similar to her, you know, offer her the opportunity to become, you know, kind of like another Tony Stark, another successful, iconic um, uh, face, you know, anything the term Ironheart was ever used in the series, we can table that. But you know, just the idea that she could become this icon, this paragon, and that's not what she chose. That's not the choice that she made. She just wanted her friend back. And you know, obviously, again, she's going to pay a price. She's going to lose her soul, or at least have
Soul
her
for
soul put
soul.
in peril. But maybe she can justify it by saying, you know, I'm willing to do that to have my friend be alive again. And again, that
TJ.
just goes back to the whole why there needs to be a season two, because one thing that I really would love to see is to see Lyric Ross, who plays Natalie, play living Natalie, totally different from how AI Natalie, you
Mm,
know, was played. Because this is a person. This is someone who isn't just a projection of Riri's hopes and dreams. And she's going to be the one, in my opinion, to basically explain to her that Riri's lost her way. You know, she's gonna be the one who can actually, you know, make talk some sense into Riri and pull her back from the brink, if that in fact is what happens.
I could see that happening, or I could see the reverse happening to the same conclusion, where because this is a reanimated person that the devil just brought back for the dead, she starts going down a very different path that is not Natalie. That's almost kind of like Lazarus Pit-esque, of
Mm,
a new kind of darkness within that character. And it eventually allows Riri to see, like, oh, I'm going down the wrong path again. But one thing that I find very interesting about this, and it was something I was thinking as I was watching, and it's also something that our friend Matt Remke, co-host of the Direct.com, I saw him post on Twitter as well. WandaVision, Ironheart, and Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness all ended exactly the same way. Oh, hey, our hero technically comes out on top, but they messed with this magical relic slash person, and now they are scarred and have an evil side to them.
Well,
mm.
let's kind of boil this down a little bit more, TJ. What's the main theme of all of those? Like, what's the one thing connecting all three of those?
Grief?
No.
Yeah. That's
Okay,
the
I mean
magic
magic,
grief.
dude. I mean magic. You're
Oh,
thinking too hard.
But like
I
when
mean
we were
magic.
talking about how
TJ, the
Ironheart is a
one thing with
tragedy,
magic has one rule. What's the rule?
it has a
always has a
cost.
price.
It always has a
Cost.
price. Always has a cost, however you want to say it. That's the one thing connecting all of those. WandaVision, the Darkhold was the cost, right? Like losing yourself to that thing is the cost. Same thing with Doctor Strange in the end. Like they both kind of did it. Here, it's making a deal with the devil, right? Like the more you do your magic, the more it has a cost. I would love to see Doctor Strange 3 essentially be Jason Aaron's like magic has a cost. Have fun, kids. You like magic is gone. And then we get to see Wanda Maximoff with a shotgun, which is always freaking hilarious. And I would love that. Let me no prizes for a second, though, because I'm still really upset that there is no season 2, and I do not think there is going to be a season 2. I just don't see that happening, unfortunately. I think the
Well, yeah,
release
hold on.
model and
Let's say you
everything,
can't
like,
say there is no season 2. There could
I
be.
said
You're
there
just being
probably won't
pessimistic.
be. I said probably won't be. Right now, right now there is no. As of right now, there is no season 2. There probably won't be a season 2. The only way this gets continued anywhere else is in either a Champions or Young Avengers story. Mephisto always kind of sees a step ahead. He always has a bit of an end game, right?
Mm.
Riri's not his end game. The Hood wasn't his end game. Who does he really want? He wants
Billy
someone that
Maximoff?
Billy Maximoff. He's going to want someone with an insane amount of power to do whatever he wants to do. It's always one step ahead. So in order to get the Riri, he can get the Billy. That's how I think you can at least combine those two stories in a way.
That's how also I was going to suggest this picks up in a Young Avengers or Champion storyline, is the Mephisto. Like that's how Riri. I feel like we thought it was going to be a Kamala and Kate go go and just like do some recruiting. But I think this now is it's not going to connect to Kamala, Kate, and Cassie. It's going to connect to Wiccan, and that is.
I mean, I
eventually they'll come
expected,
forth, but
I did expect a Young Avengers post-credit scene, and the fact that they went with the Hood instead in the post-credit
instead
scene.
they went with the Doctor Strange or / Wanda post-credit scene of
Yeah.
here's the evil thing.
Yeah, that threw me because I would have been where Damon was if, you saw Riri get recruited for the Young Avengers, because then you could continue her story there. And a lot of the work of getting her in the Young Avengers can happen off screen at that point. But we would know that she has this darkness kind of working inside of her for whenever they want to spin that out. Because the Young Avengers could still show up in Doomsday and not touch this storyline until the proper Young Avengers or Champions series. Young Avengers, Champions, Children's Crusade, whatever you want to do.
Champion Avengers of the New Order.
Champions Crusade. But yeah, because we still have to figure out, we still have to, find out what's happening to Tommy. There's potentially a Mephisto element there. There's the skeleton, of a story that puts them all together is there, but because at this point I'm committed, or at least emotionally invested in seeing how Riri arcs out. I don't think we ever intended for her or expected for her to be one of the main protagonists of Young Avengers. And now, because of how important her relationship to Mephisto is, I would feel like she was shortchanged if she wasn't one of the main protagonists in Young Avengers.
You know what I would love, even though I don't think it's going to happen. Sorry to cut you off, TJ. What I would love, but I don't think it's going to happen just because Marvel Comics decided to go a completely weird freaking way with Wanda Maximoff, is in the end, like, as we kind of know with Children's Crusade, who is Wanda kind of like hooked up with, but like doesn't really know because she's kind of brainwashed, is Doom. I've been saying for a while, I was like, it'd be kind of cool if it was like Mephisto in the end. That way you get the Mephisto of it all. And that's how you kind of like tie all those things in together. But who knows if they go that route? I think that would be fascinating. It was like the kids are like, we got to go find the Scarlet Witch. And in the end, it has to deal with Mephisto. That way you get the Riri of it all in there.
They're trying to rescue Wanda from Mephisto, but Mephisto needs Wiccan's power to get what he wants from Wanda.
Mm-hmm. And you have to make a deal, baby.
Yeah. We're 100% same page that I'm on with you there. That's kind of going to, whether or not it is an Ironheart season 2 or a Young Avengers Champions project, I am confident this continues somewhere. Because for the reason that MTF brought up as well, of the Tommy thing, they set that up. That's going to happen. And then they did it again in the Marvels with Kamala and Kate. They have to do something. There's been nothing announced, but they have to. If they don't, that's literally just like the biggest lie and blunder in the history of the MCU. I have to assume that we don't know anything about it yet. Because this is not like a Eros thing where they just decided they don't want to do they just don't want to do Eternals anymore. This isn't a Blade thing where the movie's been in development hell. This isn't a Hercules thing where Thor Love and Thunder bombed and so they don't know what they have to completely change their plan for a 5th Thor movie. This is them in multiple movies and multiple projects now actively setting up the same storyline. So I have to believe it gets picked up at bare minimum as a main story point in Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, or in their own series, in their own movie, in Ironheart season 2. Like maybe they Defenders it. Maybe they Defenders it eventually, and they go, Ironheart gets a season 2, Ms. Marvel gets a season 2, Hawkeye gets a season 2, and all of those are going to lead to a Young Avengers series. Something like that. I could dream plays out, but I
I
don't
mean,
know.
at that point, our younger vendors would be like 35.
Yeah.
That's the downside
That's
of
why you call
doing it
them
that way.
champions or new Avengers, which I guess is already taken right now too. But maybe they're the West Coast. I don't know. Just give me this team up. They're all of our favorite people introduced since Endgame. Literally, like all of the people that were like, wow, great casting choices. What a breath of fresh air to the MCU. They're all members of this team. It would be absolutely perfect. I also think another place that this specific story could potentially pick up is in the third Doctor Strange movie that will inevitably come out at some point. But for those that, I mean, we've been teasing, we've been talking about it. The episode fully ends on Riri with the same mystical rash poking out that Parker had, and you can see in the background her Ironheart suit equipped with the hood over top of the Ironheart suit.
Oh, I didn't
missed
notice
part.
that.
I didn't
Yeah.
notice that either.
That's
In the background, the hood
crazy.
is draped over the Ironheart suit.
Girl, what are you doing?
So she's going like full on Darkhold taking her over just like Wanda did. She's going full on demon takeover mode here.
Girl, what you
I have to admit,
Oh no.
as we go, I want to throw it to both of you to see if there's any other theories where we see this next before we get out of here, because I am starving and I want to go make some food. But the last like thing that I was like genuinely like, oh my god, is this gonna happen for a second? Was I thought we were gonna get for like just a split second, I thought we were gonna get a flaming Ironheart suit. I thought it was going
Like
to
a
be like a
Ghost Rider
legitimate
Ironheart?
Ghost Rider tease, but the Ghost Rider was Riri Williams in her Ironheart suit.
Could be. There's many Ghost Riders. I mean,
That would
sure.
be freaking cool.
It would have been something.
It would be a cool thing. I mean, so my theory. Well, I don't know if it's a theory or wish casting, but I want the Young Avengers to be formed off screen, and then they show up in Doomsday. So we don't have we can find out perhaps in a flashback how they were formed, but I just think at this point the best place to debut them in front of the greatest possible audience would be in Doomsday, and then you let people know that they're going to get a spin-off project, and you can maximize the excitement for it by doing it that way. And if Mephisto is the main antagonist of that Young Avengers project, like we said, we have these story threads that can justify it. People have talked about having villains that are more exclusive to Disney Plus. I don't think Sascha Baron Cohen. I mean, he's been in movies, but I don't know if he's that expensive to where you need to put him in a movie to cash in. So if they do decide that they want to do a Young Avengers Disney Plus series, make it 8 or 9 episodes, of course, and you have all the characters kind of get tempted the way that Riri's been tempted. Potentially, a couple more people get corrupted.
Where do you want to see Riri Williams next? Let us know. Do you want to see her in Ironheart Season 2? Do you want to see her in a Young Avengers / Champions project, or just have her show up in Doomsday or Doctor Strange? Let us know in the chat. Let us know in the YouTube comment section. Let us know wherever you get your podcasts when you're subscribing and leaving a 5-star review. Or, of course, you can let us know on socials at Agents Fandom on TikTok and Twitter, Agents of Fandom everywhere else. You also want to make sure you're hitting the like button, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell. 1, to help us out, but 2, because you don't want to miss out on the upcoming Ironheart interview. We're going to drop the Bear podcast, the Love Island podcast, our Comic Corner, and our Superman and Fantastic Four stuff dropping over the next couple weeks. Damon, any final thoughts on Ironheart before we get out of here?
I wish I liked it more than I did. I wish I had more tech versus magic, like I was kind of not promised, but anticipating. I think the ending is wild, and if they somehow, for whatever reason, do not continue this in any way, because we're just going straight into mutants after this, I will be very disappointed.
That's where I'm leaning to, is if we just go, I am excited to see the X-Men in the MCU. I'm excited to see mutants, but if we don't get these Young Avengers and Shang-Chi and all of these other cool characters introduced over these phases, if we're just kind of done with them post Doomsday, post Secret Wars, I'd be very sad. I think there's a lot of storytelling that could still be done with these characters. MTF, final thoughts, and where can the people find you on socials, and tell us about the racial draft?
So prediction time. You heard it here first, guys. I haven't worked out an acronym yet. Riri's new AI will be Mephisto. In her new hell suit, she will have an AI and will be Mephisto. So that's my prediction. Now, where you can find me at MTF III on Twitter. You can also find me at the Racial Draft Pod on Twitter, where we've been on hiatus, but we'll be back in the fall with the Racial Draft.
Also, who's winning that right now, MTF?
Who's winning?
Yeah, who's in first place?
Oh, I mean, apropos for America right now, the white delegation is in first place in the racial draft for the first time ever. Racial movement in 2025 with the battle for racial supremacy, that it would be the Caucasian delegation on top. I could not have predicted that, but here we are.
I have done everything I can to steer our image towards good after taking over that delegation.
Yeah, it says the man who was like, "Hey, so we just drafted Black Panther. Come up with a story, please."
That was your idea. You wanted to do it.
I wanted Shang-Chi because I had a whole story for that one. You gave me the worst possible case scenario.
I'm not taking the blame for that one.
That
was all Damon. All the villainous aspects of our delegation come from Damon.
Yeah, and now Marvel doubled down. Now they're going to be a white Black Panther in the future. They gentrified Wakanda.
And I'm now so many idiots who just go to Facebook for their news think that is a real thing happening in Black Panther 3. The amount of people I have in my other job, unrelated to Agents of Fandom stuff, I have had people coming to me and I've had to kick them out of chats because they won't stop spamming the chat about how Ryan Gosling is playing the next Black Panther in Black Panther 3. If you believe that, I don't know what to tell you. Like, genuinely, it's beyond like the schools failed you. Like, you might just be too dumb to function.
Yeah, but in MAGA America, we've got a lot of years to go before that movie comes out. So who knows? Who knows? Who we know he made a deal with Mephisto. We know that guy gave it all up. So who's to say? But yeah, the racial draft, where we change the complexion of the comic book universe, one draft pick at a time. We go through the different universes and we consider what it would be like if certain characters were under a different racial lens, or solidified under the same racial lens. That's kind of how it works. And I'm dutifully trying to wrap up season 8 so that we can move forward with season 9. But as of now, the white delegation on top. So it is this to be an unprecedented winning streak for the whites. So,
all right, that'll do it for today's episode. On that note, we'll be back next week talking some The Bear, talking some Love Island, talking some comic books, and we will, of course, be diving into Superman as well. Thank you so much for tuning in today, everyone. Hit the like button on your way out. We will see you next time. On behalf of myself, Damon, and MTF. Peace.